The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Perfect, and thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is a wonderful Monday morning, I must say, and listening to all of these speeches prior, I would like to say thank you. Thank you to the Liberal Party member who I just heard speak about the importance of this bill. My friend from Saint Jean, I did not recognize that she grew up on a farm, so we have a few more things in common here. So it's great to hear that, and thank you very much to the member from Hamilton Centre. This is something that we have to recognize, the importance to our farmers. They are the ones who produce our food. They are the ones that throughout this entire pandemic have been working there to support Canadians. And when you look at this bill, I think it's absolutely exceptional. And I would really like to thank our great friend, my great friend from the member from Northumberland, Peterborough South. I actually drove through parts of his riding yesterday. And so I love driving through, coming from Elgin, Middlesex, London on my return to Ottawa, because the one thing I see in southwestern Ontario is beautiful agricultural land, lots of different commodities and sectors, but we are a big farming community. Yes, there's some big pockets of cities, but surrounding all of those big cities are acres and acres of great farmland where we're producing these commodities and these foods that are necessary. I'm going to just start with a very simple quote that is actually coming from the member from Northumberland's Peterborough South, and this is a quote that he said into committee. And I want to put this in the record here in the House of Commons because, this is a very valuable debate. And for the farmers who are living in Elgin, Middlesex, London, I believe I have I don't believe, I can tell you, according to Statistics Canada in 2016, 1,930 in Elgin, and in the county of Middlesex, 3,260 farm operators. So these are things that are very, very important to my riding. So having the opportunity to speak to this bill is. But to quote my good friend, he indicated in committee at the Agricultural Committee, the greenhouse gas pollution pricing currently allows qualifying farmers an exemption on certain farm fuels, such as gasoline and diesel. However, it fails to extend that exemption to other fuels, such as natural gas and propane. This is challenging on many different fronts, as farmers quite often don't have other options, and their only option for this particular industrial equipment may be natural gas and propane. The science says that natural gas and propane are often cleaner fuels than diesel or gasoline. Why would we not include them in this exemption? Farmers, after all, are stewards of our land, and along with our Indigenous people, we're some of the first environmentalists standing up for the land and also for the animals and plants located on these properties. And that is why I wanted to bring to this and talk about propane. I have quite a bias, I'll be honest. In Elgin, Middlesex, London, the former chair of the Canadian Propane Association is a resident there. He is also the CFO for Dowler Carn, which is probably one of the biggest distributors of gasoline and fuel products to multiple farmers in the southwestern Ontario area. So I can sit down with him. To be honest, you call Dan Kelly up, you have a question, he gives you the answer, and if he doesn't have the answer, he's going to find it because he is out there working for Canadian farmers. And so he brought this to my attention as well and said, Karen, Bill C-206 is excellent. This is what we need to do. And he was actually hoping that we would not have to put through Bill 206, that the Liberal government may recognize this and that it's actually in the budget bill, but we didn't see that they have not recognized that it's going to take more than just 2 or 3 years for farmers to be able to transition to greener fuel. So I was really happy to see that this bill is continuing and coming to third reading. But as the member from St. John indicated, we are on some of the final days. So I'm hoping today we can get through this. And then hopefully this is a bill that when we do return to Parliament, the Senate looks at it very quickly because this is what our farmers need. This is what they're asking for. So going on to the Canadian Propane Association, I want to read the statement that I had received from them, and I'm sure everybody had received from them as well. On why we should be supporting this bill and on the importance of this exemption that would come to our farm operators. So this is the statement that they had put out, and this was following, I believe that there was a vote and it had passed, and this was the vote on second reading on Bill C-206. It was 177 to 145, so all opposition parties actually had agreed and recognized that this was something that needed to be done. We saw that the Liberal government wasn't good with that yet. It may have had to do with it coming from an awesome Conservative, but you never know there. But let me read to you the Canadian Propane Association statement here. Discouraging the increased use of carbon-intense fuels such as gas gas and diesel in favor of low emissions energy like propane for agricultural applications would be a win-win for the environment and for farmers' bottom line. This was from Natalia St. Pierre, who is the president. The principle of the GGPPA is extended to encourage a reduction in the use of carbon-intense fuels, said Pierre. By exempting gas and diesel, but not allowing the same exemption for propane, the law actually encourages the increased use of gas and diesel. This is environmental nonsense. And actually, just moments ago, we heard our friend from Hamilton Centre say the exact same thing, that because of this, people are actually beginning to use diesel. So the government has put something in that, here's the carbon tax, but they're actually giving it an exemption to a dirtier fuel. This is something that we have an option here. I'm going to get back to quoting here. St. Pierre said that the CPA members are also hearing from their customers in agricultural sector about the significant added cost due to the federal carbon tax. According to an estimate provided by the Parliamentary Budget Officer last December, over the next 5 years, about $235 million will be collected from farmers for using natural gas and propane. And I'm going to leave it there for a second because I do know the statistic. I was speaking to Dan about this, and on behalf of all the farmers in our area, he actually sent a check for over $1 million for just a few months of carbon tax collection. That few $1 million could have been used for so many other things. Perhaps it may have been used for new technology. Perhaps it could have been used for workers, new things within the farm. But instead, they're paying this money forward to the government. And we're talking about $235 million. I've heard people talk about this as the government's going to be losing $235 million. To me, the government shouldn't be taking $235 million in the first place. So they're not losing revenue. This is revenue that they shouldn't have been taking. And I think we have to look back at this. This is not a loss of the government. This is where the government had no business taking the $235 million in the first place. Because at the end of the day, who pays for it? It's going to be the farmers. And then from the farmers, who pays for it? It's going to be people who are sitting at their table, having their cornflakes, having their eggs from their chicken farms, all of these different things. These are the people that at the end of the day are going to be impacted. So yes, this is good for the farmers, but actually this is good for Canadian consumers who want to support the agricultural industry in Canada, and especially in Elgin, Middlesex, London, which is so important to me. So these are things I think are really important to look at is what does this look like? We've talked about inflation. Inflation in the last few weeks has been a really key thing that we have seen. We've talked about the price of wood and lumber, how much that has gone up. I know housing is a big issue. We've seen in my riding of Elgin, Middlesex, London, 46% increase since last April in the cost of a two-story home. So inflation is an issue here. And what I see here is the government is just adding more costs to our goods. If we're talking about how we can do poverty reduction strategies, if we're talking about all of those things, we need to see what we're doing that's creating more barriers. And so I look at something as simple as this exemption is just another barrier, or not giving this exemption is just another barrier to reducing the high costs of our goods right now. And as farmers, we know that when they're paying all of this money, it just kind of comes below to the bottom line. I want to read to you also, this is from Grain Farmers. So Grain Farmers of Ontario, I am so fortunate to be able to work with Scott, who is in our area. He is our zone manager there. So thanks to Scott, who is always out here working with me as well. Scott and the Grain Farmers of Ontario, they've come out. They're the province's largest commodity organization, representing over 28,000 barley, corn, oat, soybean, and wheat farmers. And they have come out very, very supportive of this bill, Bill C-206, and an act to amend the greenhouse gas pricing. The bottom line, the reason they're saying this is they're supporting this bill on the exemption of carbon tax for on-fuel farm. It's vital, and Grain Farmers of Ontario calls on all MPs to consider the tax on grain drying and its impact to the agriculture system in Canada. It's quite simple. The government should not be making money off a tax that negatively impacts a farmer's ability to market viable grain. The carbon tax that does not make that happen. This is Brendan Byrne, and Brendan is the chair of the Grain Farmers of Ontario, or let's just say back in February 22nd of 2021, he was the chair, and I know that there's lots of AGMs and things going on, so perhaps that's still not his position now, but these are really important things. As we've always indicated, farmers have been doing great work in our communities. They are the stewards of our land. I think of some of the great projects that have been done in the back of farmers' fields where we're doing some wetlands conservation, where we're going out there and we're taking those settlements back. She wants me to finish up. Well, Madam Chair, I am happy to finish up, but when it comes to farmers, I just love them. So I am very supportive of Bill C-206, and thank you very much. And thank you to my honorable member from North London. Well, he knows where he's from, but thank you so much for getting this bill out.